For the pumpkin, we're going to use 3 strands of 400 to fill in each of these little body sections on the pumpkin. So I've got my strands here. I'm going to start on the outer edge, and I'm just going to, again, do a little straight stitch in here that's going to get covered up so I'm not running into my knot every time. I like to start in the middle and go straight across. We're doing a satin stitch here. And I'm going to make some little guidelines. So this one, once I get to the top on this outer edge, it might go a little bit more up diagonally to accommodate that curve. And then this one down here might go a little bit more diagonally in this direction. So then as I'm stitching, I kind of have these guidelines to sort of work in between. For the 2 middle sections, all of your strands can kind of just go straight across horizontally. So I'll just make a couple guidelines here. Maybe one more at the top. A little bit of a knot here. Okay. Do the same thing on this one. We're filling in each of these sections individually so that we can keep the shape visible. And then again on this outer pumpkin shape, I'm going to do a little bit of a diagonal here. Straight across horizontal right in the middle. And then a little bit of a diagonal here. Now you can just start filling in between all of your guidelines. So I'm starting with this section over here, and I'm just going to satin stitch in this whole section. Fill in this top section here. And then I'll continue by working my way down. So then I'm going to go fill in all of here. Then I'll fill in this one, and this one. When you're done with that, we're going to do a little outline with some of our shiny floss. Once you've finished filling in the pumpkin, like so, you're going to take a strand of your copper shiny floss, and you're just going to do a little back stitch around around the whole border of the pumpkin, and then each of these little section breaks inside. So it just helps give it a little bit of definition and makes it stand out a little bit more. And shiny floss is really pretty, so it's fun to add into our design when we can. So I'm just working around. It also kind of helps, you know, there's a little bit of uneven stitching here, so it kind of helps cover that up, which is a good trick. Just give it a little bit of a border here. So just work all the way around like that in a back stitch and do each of these interior lines, and then we'll just need to do the stem to finish up our pumpkin. All right, the last little thing we're going to fill in on this pumpkin is the little stem right here. I'm just going to do a little bit of a satin stitch with 3 strands of the brown 779. So I'm just going from the top of the stem to the top of the pumpkin and repeating that a couple times a little bit further down. maybe one more. Okay, our pumpkin is done. If you still have those 3 strands of 779 threaded, go ahead and keep those on the needle. If not, you're gonna still use 3 strands of 779. We're gonna come up here and we're gonna do the book. And for the book, I'm just gonna do a chain stitch for the spine of the book here. So for chain stitch, I don't think we've gone over that yet. Chain stitch, you're gonna come up through the fabric. You're going to put your needle back down through the same hole that you came up through and begin to pull it through, but not all the way. Leave a little loop out in the direction that you want to stitch. And you're going to come up a stitch length away on the inside of that loop. And then you're going to pull your thread against where you're coming up from. So it creates like a little chain. The next step is to make a down stitch on the inside of that loop in the same hole that you just came up through. Leave a loop out. Come up a stitch length away on the inside of the loop you left out and pull tight. Make your next down stitch inside that loop in the same hole that you just came up through. Leave a loop out. Come up a stitch length away on the inside of that loop and pull. Make your down stitch on the inside of that loop. Leave a loop out and pull. And I'm going to do one more right here. All right, so that is the spine of the book. Now we'll fill in the front cover. Okay, for this little square on the inside of the front cover, you're gonna grab 3 strands of your yellow 680, and you're just going to satin stitch this in. I like to go just vertically, so up and down. And you'll just fill in this whole little square area with the yellow. Once you've finished that, we'll fill in the rest of the front cover here. So just keep working your way across. And meet me back when you're done with this little part. So for the rest of the book cover, you're going to take 3 strands of 3857 and we're going to fill it in again with a satin stitch, but just working horizontally this time. Remember that trick with satin stitch, you can just kind of make a stitch in the middle that you're going to cover up and then go ahead and start filling in the space that you want to fill. So I'm just starting at the bottom here and I'll work my way all the way up to the top. When I get to the little yellow square, I'll just make sure to work my stitches around that. Oops. Okay, so keep filling in like that, and when we're done with this part, we will move on to our little cup down here. All right, moving on, we're gonna come down here and do this little mug of hot cocoa. And remember, when we're stitching like interior elements that have space around them to fill, I like to start with the interior elements first because I find it easier to fill in around those once I have them stitched. So I grabbed 3 strands of the 301, and we are going to do a little satin stitch of this little pumpkin on the inside of the mug. So you can just work up and down vertically here and fill in this little pumpkin with 301. I started in the middle and then pulled some strands on either side of that one. And it's pretty tiny, so as long as we get the general sort of rounded pumpkin shape, we'll be good to go here. So when you're done with that, you're gonna grab 3 strands of 779, and we'll give this pumpkin a little stem as well. Once you have that pumpkin filled in, 3 strands of 779, just do a couple little straight stitches here to give a stem that we can easily fill in around later. So I'm just gonna do a couple right here at the top of the pumpkin, and then we'll fill in around that with our next color. Do one more. Okay. Okay, so now we're gonna fill in the rest of the mug. I'm gonna start with the little handle. I'm using 3 strands of 632. Let me just check on that. I think it's 632. Yes, 632. Okay, 3 strands of 632, and we're gonna start with the handle. You're just gonna do a back stitch around here because it's kind of a tight curve. So I like to use the back stitch to accommodate the tightness of the curve. But we might just do it a couple times around. So I'll show you what I mean. I'm gonna go all the way around once on the edge of the handle. The smaller your stitches, the better here, so that you can get this curved line stitched really nicely. Couple more here. Okay, and then I'm gonna go on the inside of that line I just stitched, and I'm just gonna do it again. So right next to it, I'm just gonna again do back stitch all the way around one more time. All right, so once you have that finished, we will fill in around the pumpkin as well. One more stitch here. Okay, that's good. I still have a little bit of line showing there, but that's fine, that'll wash away. I think 2 all the way around is good enough. To fill in around the pumpkin, you're just going to do a satin stitch working from top to bottom here. When you get to the pumpkin, you just have to change up the length of your stitches to work around the pumpkin. So now I'm just going to fill in on the top half here for a little bit. All the way around my pumpkin. Okay, so you get the idea. Just keep filling in all the way around all of this space on the mug, and then we'll do the little whipped cream topping last. Last thing to fill in for this little mug is the whipped cream. So I'm using 3 strands of the ecru, and I'm going to start at the top here and just do a split back stitch to fill in all of this space. So I'm going to go all the way down this side. Remember, with split back stitch, you're coming up a stitch length away and splitting your stitches from the previous stitch for your down stitch. So I'll go down here. And then right here. So this just gives it kind of a textured look. And then you can just work your way back up right next to those stitches. So now I'll start here. And work my way back up. Okay, and then I'll go back down. So you'll just fill in all of this space this way. And when you're done with that, meet me back and we'll move on to the leaves. Okay, see you in a minute. Up next here, we're going to do the little tiny stem on each leaf. So for that, you're just going to use 3 strands of 779, and you'll just do a straight stitch for each of these. Since we have 2 layers of fabric, you don't really need to worry about pulling the thread, you know, across the space on the back side. So you don't really need to tie off every time. I think you can just, once we have the backing fabric on, you won't be able to see any of those strands that come across. But if you want to, you certainly can. Just take a little bit of extra time. So I'm just filling in each of these with a little straight stitch. Okay. Now you'll tie that off and then we'll fill in our leaves. Okay, so these leaves are going to be a combination of 3 colors. We're going to use 301, 400, and 680. I'm starting with 3 strands of 301, and I'm going to start with this leaf right here, 3 strands, and for this you're going to be doing a satin leaf. So you're going to come up at the tip of the leaf, pull your thread all the way through, and make your down stitch about halfway down the center length of the leaf. Then you're going to come back up on either side of that stitch, following the outline of the leaf. So you're going to come up a little bit below where you came up last time and next to it, and make your down stitch directly underneath that first down stitch that we made in the center of the leaf. Repeat on the other side now. And then you're just going to alternate and repeat on each side until you've filled in the entire leaf. So I'm coming up a little bit below here, right down there, and then a little bit below here. So it's pretty repetitive, you just keep alternating sides. If you reach the stem and you still have space you want to fill in, you can kind of just end your stitch either in the same hole that you've already stitched through, or make it a little bit shorter. Like this one, I might just stitch from here to here, and that leaf looks pretty complete. So I'm also going to do this one with 301. And just to save on some time here, I'm going to do this one up at the top also with 301. So once you've done this one, and this one, then we'll move on to the next color. Okay, so I filled in the rest of these little leaves. We've got this one, and this one in 680, and then this one and this one in 400. 3 strands of each, and you're just going to do that same satin leaf stitch that I taught previously for each of these little leaves. So when you're done with that, the next thing we're going to do is our cozy woven blanket. Alright, for this next part we're going to do this blanket, and we're going to be combining different colors of threads together for this. So I have 2 strands of 452 here. I have 2 strands of 3064, and I have 2 strands of 400. So you're going to combine all of these together, so line up the ends of each one like so, and then you're going to thread all 6 together through your needle with the larger eye. So meet me back once you've done that and you've gotten all 6 strands of each of these colors together. Okay, so just again, on my needle here, I have 2 strands of 452, 2 strands of 3064, and 2 strands of 400, and I threaded them all together on my needle and tied a knot at the end, and I cut off any excess since some of my threads were kind of different lengths. So we're going to start to fill in this blanket. I'm starting at the top here, and I'm just going to be doing a chain stitch. So combining all these different colors of thread plus the chain stitch will give our blanket a nice chunky knit look, and it'll be really fun. We're also going to add in some tassels. once we're done doing the chain stitch portion, which is another fun little thing. So I just like using some different colors of thread here together. It gives it sort of that look like it was woven with different colors of yarn. And this is a really fun thing to do in your embroidery projects. You can kind of see it just has a variation of color here. So we're going to chain stitch all the way down. We went over chain stitch a little bit on that book. Essentially, you're just going to keep doing that here. Going back down that hole, leaving a loop out, coming up on the inside of that loop, pulling tight. I'm going to make my down stitch on the same hole right there on the inside of that loop, leave a loop out, and then pull tight. Now there's a little bit of some space at the edge where the tassels are going to be, so I'm going to go ahead and anchor this chain down right here by making a down stitch just on the other side of that loop. And then I'm going to go back up this way and fill in. I'm going to leave a little bit of space unstitched here so that I have room to make my tassels. So this part will be stitched in, this space I'm going to leave a little bit unstitched in. Might look a little bit different on your pattern. I'm going to make this look a little bit nicer on the pattern. So I'm going to start right here now, and I'm going to do a chain going up this way. So I'll just keep working down, up, down, up, down, up until I've filled in this first part of the blanket. So meet me when you're done with that. All right, I filled in this whole top half of the blanket. I'm going to do just one little chain in this little section here. So I still have my 2 strands of each color, and I'm just going to do one chain to fill in this bottom section. So what I mean by that is I'm making one little chain and then I'm anchoring it down, and I'll just repeat all the way across. So then I'll come right next to it, do another one, like so. Anchor that down. Whoops, sometimes your threads can get a little caught up in each other. Okay, so then I'll come right next to that one and do one here, and I'm just going to work my way all the way across this space so that it's filled in with a little chain. And then we'll come back in and I'll show you how to do the tassels on the blanket. All right, I'll see you in just a minute as soon as we're done with that. Okay, we're going to put some tassels here and here on our blanket. I've got 6 strands of 632 threaded onto my larger eyed needle, and I'm going to show you how you're going to do this. So essentially, you're going to start by coming up right here. We'll fill in these first. So come all the way through with your thread, and you're going to make a down stitch just right next to where you came up. So almost like we're making a little lazy daisy or a loop here. And then we're just going to anchor this loop down. So I'm going to come up just on the other side of my previous stitch right here. And I'm going to pull my thread just until it hits the back of the fabric. If I keep pulling, my loop will get shorter and shorter. So you want to leave your loop out about like that far because we're going to trim it across at the end. So I'm leaving it out like this, and then I'm going to anchor it down by making a down stitch just on the other side of these stitches. and that will keep it in place. So then I'm going to repeat the process. So I'm going to come up right here, make a stitch up, make a stitch down right next to that one, leave a loop out, about like that, and then I'll anchor it down by coming up to the right of both of those stitches, pull my thread until it hits the back of the fabric, so it just hit right there. I'm not going to pull too hard because I don't want to pull that loop through, and then I'll anchor it down by making a down stitch just on the other side of my loop, which anchors it into place. You're going to keep working your way across this area by making these little loops. So come up, go down right next to that, loop, come back up to the right of my stitches, and then anchor them down on the left side. I'm going to come up right next to that tassel or loop, make a down stitch right next to where I just came up, create a loop, and then anchor it down by coming up to the right of that loop, pulling my needle through, and then making a down stitch just on the other side. Okay, so keep working all the way across, like that. When you're done making all of these loops, I'll show you what to do next. Okay, see you back in just a minute. Okay, I've gone all the way across here and made all these little loops that are now just hanging down, and they look kind of funny. So we're going to go ahead and trim them. This is where having a pair of embroidery scissors is really helpful. But if not, just make sure you have a pair of really sharp scissors. So essentially, you're just going to give this a little haircut, and I'm going about that length, and I'm just going to trim across, making sure to cut all through the fabric, and I'm just trimming all the way across here. So I'm getting all those little loops off, and now I'm left with some cute little tassels. They're kind of overlapping over my chains down here, and that's fine. That's kind of what we want. I'm going to trim these just a little bit shorter so I can see a little bit more of that bottom layer. Sometimes you'll have some leftover fuzz, but that's okay. It'll go away. Okay, so now we have our little tassels here. You're going to repeat the same process going from here to here. So make all of your little loops, give it a haircut so that you have tassels here and you have tassels here.